Sawadika, Sawadika. Hi, girls. I'm so happy to see you here again today because it's my first video of a new series that I want start on my YouTube channel. And if you already follow me, you know my reaction video. And actually, if you want more reaction video, go to my TikTok because here in YouTube it's a little bit complicated because of the copyright, but no worries, I'm not going to stop making them, and whenever I can post a reaction video here, I always will do it. But today I'm here for something new. I won't give you something new, I won't offer you something completely different, and I really hope you will enjoy it. Because if you know me, you know I'm a huge fan of TyGL, and if you are here, you probably a TyGL fan. But what you maybe not know is I'm very passionate about writing, script, storytelling, and psychology, and I love analyzing my series. I love understand why a scene work or not. I love know the characters, how the character evolves. I love knows how the writer make us feel so many emotions. Anyway, I love analysis series, and I thought like, okay, Sarah, but why you keep your analyze just for you? why not share with you? Because I'm not a selfish girl, I'm very generous, and it's for that I had the idea to create this kind of content when I share with you my analysis and analyze. Sorry. And for the first video, I couldn't choose another series than The Royal Pain. I couldn't. Because you know, The Royal Pain is a masterpiece. So make yourself comfortable. This video gonna be a little long because we have 16 episodes to analyze. But yes, grab some food, grab something to eat, something to drink, and get comfortable, and let's go. We will have another video, a second video after this one, where I will analyze characters, like a deep analysis of character. But for today, we just focus on general analysis of the series and its episode. And I just want to tell you something. I'm not English. I think you know. English is not my first language. It's actually my third language, so I'm not fluent. So please excuse my accent and excuse the mistake I might make. And leave a comment, leave a like, don't forget to subscribe. It gives me a lot of motivation. You know, this video and this kind of content take a lot of time to prepare and to make, so you can't imagine how you super means to me, like very a lot, girls. Anyway, let's start. So first, as you probably already know, the series is led by the main characters Anine and Pin, played respectively by Rebecca Patricia Armstrong and Franca Rochat. I'm going to give you a quick summary of the story. We follow Anine and Pin, two characters who are destined to love each other, but who face many obstacles along the way, and not small ones, since the story takes place in the 1950s and 60s in post-war Thailand. To really understand the series, its stakes, its complexity, and especially the characters' choices and conflicts, it's very important to first put things into context. So we are in post-war Thailand. Thailand is already a constitutional monarchy, but the royal family still holds a huge place in the society. The reigning king at the time is Rama IX, who is gradually becoming a symbol of national unity in a country going through a lot of changes. Society is extremely hierarchical. You have the royal family, the nobility, high ranking officials, and then everyone else. Your social status determines how you speak, how you behave, who you spend time with, and often even who you allow to marry. Yeah, it's not really funny. At that time, Thailand is slowly opening up to the world. It's a real period of transition. Elites are traveling more, some go abroad to study, but at the same time, traditions remain extremely strong. So you end up with a society torn between preserving tradition and moving toward modernity. And that's exactly the conflict we see in the series through the characters. We also need to talk about the place of women at that time. They had far less freedom than today. Reputation was everything, marriage was often seen as a family duty, and women were expected to be respectable, discreet, obedient, elegant, blah, blah, blah. And once you understand that, a lot of Pin's decision made much more sense. And finally, I cannot finish this context without talking about homosexuality at that time. I might actually make a separate video about its evolution in Thailand because it's such an interesting topic. But to sum it up briefly, unlike many countries, it was never illegal, but it was still very invisible and far from society accepted, especially in conservative and aristocratic cycles. The issue wasn't just love, it was family honor, reputation, and social position. So, with all of that in mind, you can now watch this series with a 1950 perspective, not a 2026 one. And I hope this helps you better understand the characters and their conflicts, because the series really does portray the society of that time and its dilemmas in very powerful way. Before we start breaking down each episode, I also wanted to highlight something that makes me love this series even more, because it's also a real gateway into Thai culture. If you don't know Thailand and its culture, this series is a beautiful introduction to it. The Royal Pain really feels like a cultural journey. You can discover Thai culture through food, for example. Bean is often shown carving fruits, and this is not just a small detail, because fruits and vegetables carving is a very old traditional Thai art called Kai Saluk, which date back to the Sukhothai kingdom centuries ago. This art is not only about aesthetic, it also reflects very important Thai values like patience, discipline, delicacy, and care for others. And honestly, I feel like it fits Pin's personality perfectly. You can also see Thai culture through costumes, dances, celebration, and even regional differences. Anyway, I could talk about this for hours, but what I really want to say is that this series is also a cultural immersion. And if you're interested in Thailand, it's truly a fascinating show to look at from that perspective. And now let's move on to what you've all been waiting for, the episode breakdown. And you are going to see why the production was especially smart in the way they structured the storytelling of this series. Throughout my analysis, I'm going to show you a graph on screen. This graph represents the story's dynamics, the actual events in Anin and Pin's relationship, obstacles, breakups, reunions, etc., etc. This graph will help you, I hope, visually understand how the series built and how it constantly plays with our emotion through the up and downs of Pin and Annie relationship from beginning to end. And you know, I know, we know, it's a fucking roller coaster. Episode 1 will probably be one of the quickest episodes to summarize because its main purpose is to lay the foundation for the entire series. Right from the start, we introduce to our two protagonists and the dynamic that will define their relationship throughout the story. On one side, we have Anin. She immediately comes across as a free-spirited, impulsive, determined, and already aware of what she fears. She's the one who takes initiative, who acts, and who refuses to stay passive when it comes to her emotions. On the other side, we have Pin, who is much more reserved, disciplined, and concerned with following the rules and expectations around her. Even though some of her actions already hint at how attached she is to Anin, she still seems to be in a state of denial, or perhaps simply doesn't fully understand her own feelings yet. The episode also highlights their childhood memories and the special bond they shared for years. This allows the audience to immediately understand how important they are to each other and why their relationship matters so much. Finally, the announcement of Anin's departure to England served as an inciting incident of the story. From a narrative perspective, this upcoming separation creates the first major obstacles in their relationship. And from an historical perspective, it also reflects the gradual opening of Thai society to the Western world during the 1950s and 60s. The fact that Anin, as a woman, is given the same opportunity to study abroad as her brothers is also very telling. It highlights both her privileged social status and the more progressive education and freedom her father provided compared to what most women of that era would have experienced. Now, let's go back to our graph. So, as you can see, episode 1 already gave us our first emotional roller coaster. We start with a clear emotional high as we introduce to Anin and Pin, their personalities, and the beautiful bond they already share. But by the end of the episode, the graph drops. Not dramatically, we only at the beginning of the story, don't worry, but enough to leave us worried about what coming next after Anin's departure to England. Even in just one episode, the series gave us both an emotional high and emotional low. It's setting the rate that it will keep throughout the entire story. So with that in mind, let's move on to episode 2, girls. Let's go. The episode begins with Anin's departure to England and the emotional impact her absence has on Pin. This is probably the first time Pin truly realizes how important Anin is to her. Even though she still can't put her feelings into words, she deeply feels the emptiness left behind by Anin's departure. Next comes a very important 5-year time jump. It allows the story to move the characters from adolescence into adulthood while showing that their bond has survived the distance through their letters. The letters play a crucial role here. They keep their connection alive despite the physical separation and remind us that their relationship never truly disappeared. The episode also introduces this fucking man, Kwa, will represent one of the first concrete obstacles to their relationship. At this stage, he is not yet the main antagonist, but he already embodies the path society considers normal for Pin, a heterosexual marriage and a conventional future. Finally, Anin's return closes the episode on a completely new dynamic. She is no longer the teenager we met in episode 1. She comes back more mature, more confident, and most importantly, with a very clear goal in mind, winning Pin's hearts. Yeah! So, here's our graph again. As you can see, we once again have an emotional high followed by a low. The first high comes from those final moments Anin and Pin get to spend together before Anin leaves for England. Then comes a big emotional drop. Yes, big emotional drop with Anin's heartbreaking departure. But little by little, the graph starts climbing again thanks to their letters, which keep their relationship alive despite the distance, until we reach another emotional high with Anin's return at the end of the episode.
And with that, let's move on to episode 3 because we have a lot of episodes, girl. Let's go. So, while episode 2 was mainly about bringing the two protagonists back together after years of separation, episode 3 is where the romantic conflict truly begins to emerge. Anine returns with certainty. She loves Pin and she has absolutely no intention of wasting time. She knows her stay in Thailand is only temporary, so she decides to act immediately. This is the episode where she stops being passive and becomes the driving force behind the romance. On the other side, Pin enters what will become one of the most important psychological aspects of her character, denial. She feels something. She reacts emotionally to Anine. But she still refuses to interpret Nao's emotions as love, and that denial starts to reveal itself through a growing jealousy. Yes, because the introduction of Anine's cousin is also very important because she acts as a catalyst. It's not a true love triangle yet, but her presence allows the audience to see what Pin still refuses to admit to herself. She's affected when Anine appears close to another woman. So, this episode isn't just about Anine trying to win Pin's heart. More importantly, it's about two very different emotional journeys. Anine is embracing her feelings, while Pin is beginning to betray her own. So, here's our graph for episode 3. This time, we stay mostly on the positive side. The episode is all about Anine's return and her determination to win Pin's heart, so the overall feeling is much more playful. We get very little emotional drop when Pin pulls away and stays in denial during the bridge scene, but it's not a negative feeling. Episode 3 is not about heartbreak yet, but it's about the excitement of the romantic chase while showing us that Pin is the only one still refusing to admit what everyone else can already see. Now, let's move on. Episode 4, girls. Episode 4. Episode 4 is a crucial turning point because it marks the transition from unspoken feelings to the first concrete act of love. Up until now, Anine has been fully aware of her feelings while Pin has continued to hide behind denial. In this episode, Anine keeps pushing Pin out of her comfort zone, using jealousy as a way to expose emotions that Pin still refuses to acknowledge. Both Anine's cousin and even Kra himself become narrative tools that highlight what Pin is trying so hard to ignore. The tennis match is particularly interesting because it reinforces the contrast between Anine and Kra. While Kra represents the traditional and socially acceptable path, Anine shows that she is willing to actively fight for what she wants. Then comes a decisive moment. With Pat and the other characters absent, the story finally creates a space where the two women can be completely alone. All the tension that has been building since the beginning of the series finally erupts in the final scene with their first kiss. Their first kiss, girls. From a narrative perspective, this kiss is essential because it makes it much harder to turn back. After this moment, Pin can no longer pretend that nothing is happening. So, here's our graph for episode 4, girls. This time we stay entirely on the positive side. The episode is filled with playful emotion again and romantic tension, building up until we reach the highest point of the episode, their first kiss. But maybe we should have seen it coming because since the beginning of the series, every major emotional high has been followed by an even bigger fall. And that's exactly what we're going to see in episode 5. Let's go, girl, stay strong. Episode 5 picks up exactly where the previous episode left off, with Anine and Pin's first kiss. But once again, Pin completely shuts down. She panics, pulls away, and run from the situation. At this point, I think she's still struggling to understand what she's feeling. What she's experiencing exists completely outside the norms and expectations she has been raised with since childhood. We then get our first truly revealing moment. Anine is deeply affected by what happened. She stops taking care of herself and eventually collapses. As soon as Pin hears about it, she rushes to her side. In that moment, we realize that her concern for Anine is stronger than all the fears that have been pushing her away. Later, Anine has to leave for a while to support her cousin after the death of her father, and it's this separation that finally becomes the definitive turning point for Pin. By experiencing Anine's absence, she finally understands what she has been refusing to see from the very beginning. What she feels isn't friendship. It isn't simple affection. It's love. And when Anine returns, Pin finally accepts her feelings and confesses that she loves her too. And thanks to that, the two women officially begin their relationship. And the series introduces an object that will become incredibly important throughout the rest of the story, the famous pin given to Pin by Anine. This object is much more than a simple accessory. It becomes a true narrative symbol, representing their bond and reappearing during some of the most important moments of their relationship. At this point, it symbolizes their love, but its meaning will continue to evolve as the story progresses. But for me, from a storytelling perspective, this is where the episode becomes particularly interesting. If you look at the story through the lens of the hero's journey, first developed by Joseph Campbell and later adapted for screenwriting by Christoph Vogler, Episode 5 clearly represents what is known as crossing the threshold. For several episodes, Pin has been receiving what we could call her call to adventure, her feelings for Anine. Yet she keeps rejecting them. She denies them, runs from them, and tries to remain in her ordinary world, the world of duty, convention, and social expectations. But by the end of episode 5, she finally makes a conscientious choice. She accepts her love for Anine. And like every hero who crosses the threshold, there is no going back. From this moment on, Pin symbolically leaves her ordinary world and enters what Campbell calls the extraordinary world. Of course, in the Royal Pin, this isn't a fantasy world on an epic adventure. The extraordinary world here is a world of openly embracing love. And with it comes the trials, the allies, the obstacles, and the adversaries that will shape the rest of their journey. That's why I consider episode 5 to be a true narrative turning point. Structurally, it marks the end of Act 1 and the beginning of Act 2. The first 5 episodes were dedicated to establishing the characters, building the romance, and guiding Pin toward accepting her feelings. From this point forward, the question is no longer, do they love each other? The question becomes, or will they protect that love against the world around them? So, here, our graph for episode 5. We start at a very high point because the episode begins during the first kiss scene. Everyone is like, oh my god, finally, it's happened. But as we have seen since the beginning of the series, every major emotional high is usually followed by an equally strong low. And that is exactly what happens here when Pin pulls away, rejects Anine, and refuses to face her own feelings. The graph drops dramatically. But little by little, the emotions start rising again at the same time as Pin slowly comes out of her denial, and the graph reaches its highest point when she finally accepts her feelings and their relationship becomes official. And this is actually a perfect example of the rhythm of the series. A constant balance between emotional highs and lows that keep us completely invested. So, as you can see, episode 5 is truly one of the major turning points of the series. it opens the door to a new phase of their relationship. So now let's move on to episode 6, the beginning of Act 2. Let's go, I'm so exciting! Episode 6 continues directly from the previous one and shows a more stable phase in Anine and Pin's relationship. For the first time, they are together and fully living their feelings. The episode mainly focuses on establishing this period of happiness and closeness, where their relationship finally exists in a concrete way, away from the denial and hesitation of the earlier episodes. But very quickly, yes, again a but very quickly, this moment of stability is disrupted by the news that Anine will leave for England earlier than expected, this time for 2 years. This announcement deeply affects both characters. Anine is devastated at the idea of leaving, and Pin falls into a very intense emotional state to the point where she stops eating properly. Her distress becomes so severe that she eventually collapsed and remains bedridden. The episode then shifts into a much heavier emotional tone. The final scene makes us believe that Anine has left without saying goodbye. Yeah, I know you remember this scene. Leaving Pin alone and completely broken. But then comes a twist. We learn that it was actually a nightmare, but this information is not revealed immediately. It's only clarified at the beginning of the next episode, creating a deliberate sense of confusion for the viewer. So episode 6 ends in a state of emotional overload, with the audience fully convinced that a painful separation has occurred, before later realizing it was a false alarm. And this is exactly the kind of storytelling device I love, because it doesn't just tell a story, it directly manipulates the audience's emotional response. We believe in a sudden separation, we experience it as real, and even when we discover it was just a nightmare, the emotional impact still remains, and that's so good. So, here are a graph for episode 6. We start at a very high point because we are still in the honeymoon phase of Anine and Pin's relationship, right after Pin finally accepts her feelings. For a big part of the episode, we are just enjoying their happiness and their time together. But then comes the announcement of Anine's departure to England, and the graph drops dramatically. At first, we might even feel angry when we believe that Anine left without saying goodbye, but after that, the emotion is not really anger anymore, it's just heartbreak. We are completely devastated, like Pin. And once again, this is exactly the rhythm of the series. The story never stays in one emotion for too long. Our feelings are constantly moving between happiness, hope, sadness, and pain. Now let's move on to episode 7, girls, Anine's departure to England. Episode 7 opens with Anine's extremely difficult departure for England. This separation is not fully acknowledged by both characters, but it remains deeply painful. Pin, unable to witness the departure scene, eventually runs after the car in a desperate final gesture. It's a very powerful moment that shows she is no longer in denial but fully aware with her attachment. Meanwhile, Anine arrives in England and is immediately confronted with the constraints of her new environment. We also discover a new dynamic around her. Several suitors show interest in her, but she consistently rejects them, and this reinforces her clear objective throughout the episode: staying faithful to Pin despite distance. It's also in this setting that a new character is introduced. A former friend of Anine, now student in England, who develops an obsessive romantic interest in her. I called the crazy girl. Yes, the crazy girl. And this creates additional tension, especially when she crosses a boundary one night. Anine firmly rejects her, once again reaffirming that her feelings remain exclusively tied to Pin. And back in Thailand, Pin continues her life between her duties at the palace and a new job in a translation office. She also becomes much more assertive with Kua, making it clear without any ambiguity that there will never, lol, be a relationship between them. The episode ends with another emotional distance game. Anin temporarily stops sending letters. Pin interprets this silence as a breakup in communication, creating a new layer of emotional tension. But this absence is actually caused by Anin's decision to finish her studies earlier so she can return to Thailand sooner. The episode closes on her surprise return. Anin finds Pin without warning and embraces her in a highly emotional final scene, breaking all the tension that had been building since the beginning of the episode. So here our graph for episode 7. We start at the lowest point of this graph, the lowest possible point of this graph, with Anin's heartbreaking departure to England. It's an emotional low for both the characters and the audience. Then little by little the graph starts to climb again as their relationship continues through their letters. When Anin suddenly stops writing, we dip slightly because we become worried. It's not really heartbreak, we never doubted that she still loves Pin, but we start wondering what's going on. And then comes a surprise reunion, the Anin surprise sending the graph all the way back to the top. Once again, the emotional swing is huge. We start the episode at rock bottom and finish at one of the highest points. But girls, England was just the first little obstacles of their relationship. Now let's move on episode 8, the real beginning of the nightmare. You know. Episode 8 is particularly interesting because it marks Anin's returns to Thailand, but more importantly, it raises the stakes around their relationship. After several months of separation, Anin finally reunites with Pin. A reception is organized to celebrate her return, but behind this festive event lies a very familiar reality for women in their social cycle: the pressure of marriage. Several suitors are present, all trying to gain Anin's attention. What I really like about how the series handles this situation is Anin's response. To get rid of the suitors, she deliberately adopts behavior that it considers unfeminine and improper for the time. She eats with her hands, without any restraint, completely breaking the image of the refined princess these men expect. It's both funny and very revealing of her character. While most women of the time are expected to conform to strict social expectations, Anin instead used those expectations against the people who impose them. The evening also reintroduces several sources of tension: Anin's cousin, the crazy girl from England, and Kwa, this fucking man. Each of these characters act as a reminder of the obstacles surrounding their relationship. Jealousy goes both ways. Pin feels uncomfortable seeing the woman around Anin, while Anin struggles with Kua's presence near Pin. This accumulation of tension eventually leads to an important scene. After drinking too much, you remember, Anin finds herself alone with Pin and the two women kiss in the garden. Up until now, their relationship had existed in a relatively protected and secret space. But this time, someone sees them. And not just anyone, Anin's older brother. The episode ends on what is probably the first real external threat to their relationship. Until now, the main obstacles were mostly internal: Pin's fear, her denial, the distance between them. But now, with those internal struggles gradually overcome, the danger becomes external. So, here our graph for episode 8. We pick up right at the top with Anin's return. The first little dip isn't really a negative one. It's just a quieter, more intimate moment with their reunion kiss. Overall, the episode stays on a very positive emotional level. Then we get a drop when Annin's brother sees them together. It's not a big drop, it's a small drop because we are definitely worried but not devastated. After all, it's our brother, so there is still hope. The graph rises again during the scene where Pin has to punish Annin. I know you remember this scene. But by the end of the episode, we did back into our concern as we see our brother processing what he has just discovered. So, we start this episode on a high and finish with cautious concern. It almost feels like the series giving us a brief moment to breathe before everything that follows. Now, let's move on to episode 9. Let's go, girl! I find episode 9 really special because it works like the last moment of calm before the storm. Up until now, the obstacles were still relatively contained, the distance, pain denial, a few annoying suitors. But from this episode onward, you can really feel that the story is preparing something much heavier. The episode picks up directly after Annin's brother discovers the secret. But surprisingly, he chooses to keep it to himself. And that's an important detail because it confirms something the series has been quietly building all along. Unlike other characters who fully represent social expectations, Annin's brother is mainly driven by his love for his sister and his desire to see her happy. After that, the characters go to spend a few days in a family beach house, and for a big part of the episode, the stakes are actually quite light. Kua keeps pursuing Pin without success, while the crazy girl becomes more and more obsessed with Annin, especially after Annin saves her life during a near-drowning scene. But at the heart of the episode, what really matters is Annin and Pin. For the first time in a long time, they have space to just be together. Between moments on the beach, more intimate conversations, and quiet scenes of closeness, the episode almost feels like a pause outside of time. This feeling reaches its peak when Annin prepares a surprise for Pin. She gives her a ring and promises that she will love her forever. The scene works like a symbolic commitment between them. I love this scene, I really love this scene. And that's exactly what makes the ending of the episode so interesting. Because the ring, which originally represents love, promise, and commitment, suddenly becomes something dangerous. When Kua sees a ring on Pin's finger, he immediately understands that something is going on. The episode ends on that look, without any direct confrontation. But as a viewer, you already know this discovery will have consequences. What I really like about the episode is how it uses a very effective narrative principle, turning a positive symbol into a source of conflict. The ring is first introduced as the physical embodiment of their love. Then, almost immediately, it becomes evidence. And in a story where love has to remain secret, evidence becomes dangerous. It's a really smart storytelling mechanism because it makes the plot progress naturally. The conflict doesn't come from random drama or forced misunderstandings. It comes directly from a choice the characters themselves made. So, here our graph for episode 9. We start with a little bit of concern, but it quickly disappears when we realize that Annin's brother decides to keep their secret. Then we get slightly worried again when everyone arrives at the beach house, like Kua, the crazy girl, and Annin's cousin in the same place. But after that, the graph keeps climbing as Annin and Pin finally get to enjoy some happy moment together, reaching one of the highest emotional peaks with Annin's symbolic proposal. But right at the end, Kua notices the ring and we are immediately worried again. By now, We know that in this series, moments of happiness never last for very long, girls. So let's move on to episode 10. Episode 10 is really interesting because it starts to make the first domino pieces fall. Up until now, the obstacles were there, but they still felt relatively distant. Here, for the first time, the consequences of Annin and Pin's relationship actually start catching up with them. The discovery of the ring by Cora in the previous episode quickly starts to have real consequences. He reports what he saw to Pat, who immediately begin questioning the origin of the ring. When she confronts Pin tries to downplay its importance, but her explanation is clearly not convincing. But what makes this episode especially interesting is that it finally gives us a deeper look into Pat as a character. Through several flashbacks, we discover that she herself once experienced a very intimate relationship with a princess she was close to. A relationship that almost never explicitly named strongly mirrors what Annin and Pin are going through now. Once again, a ring appears as a symbol of attachment and promise. But this story ends in tragedy, with the prince's death. And I think this completely changed our perception of Pat. Until now, she was mostly presented as a strict authority figure, but suddenly she becomes much more complex and human. We understand that she carries her own emotional wounds linked to love and loss. And this is where the series becomes really smart because it creates ambiguity. At this point in the story, two paths seem possible for her. Either her past experience will allow her to understand what Annin and Pin are going through and support them, or, on the contrary, that same pain will push her to reject this kind of relationship in order to prevent a similar tragedy from happening again. And that uncertainty is exactly what makes her character so compelling. The other major storyline in this episode involves Annin's brother. Annin realizes that he probably knows about her relationship with Pin. And what is interesting is that she chooses to confront him directly. And I think this moment says a lot about her character. Because she could easily ignore her suspicions and hope no one find out. But Annin is someone who acts. She prefers facing a potentially dangerous truth reader than living in uncertainty. And in the end, her intuition is right. Her brother knows everything. But instead of condemning her, he supports her. He simply acknowledges that it's love and that it's not its place to oppose it. It's probably one of the most touching moments of the episode. And once again, it shows that this character is mainly driven by love for his sister. But of course, the series doesn't end the episode on a positive note. The final scene introduces a much more serious threat. The crazy girl reveals to Annin that she knows their secret. She saw them together during their stay at the beach and now understands the nature of their relationship. And more importantly, she places Annin in front of an emotional ultimatum. What makes this scene interesting is that it's not really about love, but about possession. To love someone is to want their happiness, even when it doesn't include us. But here, she seems completely unable to accept that Annin's feeling cannot be controlled. So she turns her pain into a threat. And that's exactly what's made her an effective antagonist. She is not driven by pure cruelty, but by frustration, jealousy, and the inability to accept rejection. The episode ends once again with a new sword hanging over the couple's head. After the ring, after Kua, after Pat's suspicions, Annin and Pin's secret is now in the hands of someone who could reveal it at any moment. I think episode 10 marks a real turning point in Act 2. Up until now, the obstacles were mostly external but still manageable. From this point on, the threads start to converge. Pat begins to suspect something. Cora becomes more dangerous. The crazy girl knows the truth, and the secret becomes harder and harder to protect. This is typically the moment in the three-act structure where the protagonist slowly starts losing control of the situation. So here is our graph for episode 10. We begin with a sense of concern after Cora discovers the ring, and then the emotions become much heavier. We are both angry and sad, which is why I placed the graph between those two emotions. At first, we are angry because Pat has Pin to remove the ring. But then, as we learn more about Pat's past, we're going to understand her character better. And with the story of the princess' death, the emotion shifts more towards sadness. That's why the graph ends up somewhere between anger and sadness. It's really a mix of both. Then the graph rises again thanks to Anin's brother, Maya Love Anan, and his reaction to Anin's homosexuality. It's a real emotional relief, but that doesn't last long. The episode ends with this fucking crazy girl, failing to expose their secret, sending us straight back into anger. With that, let's go move on to episode 11. We are so close with episode 12, my favorite. Episode 11 is interesting because it serves two completely different purposes at the same time. It expands the world of the series while also preparing the dramatic explosion that comes right after. The episode opens with the announcement of Anin's cousin engagement. And I think this moment is very important because it suddenly brings us back to the reality of the time. For several episodes, we've been fully focused on Anin and Pin's love story. But this marriage reminds us that during this period, especially in aristocratic families, unions were not necessarily based on love. They were often, if not almost always, shaped by family expectations, social pressure, or political interests. It's a subtle but very effective reminder of the same constraints that also apply to Anin and Pin. The whole episode takes place in the north of Thailand. I love the north of Thailand, the cousins' home region. And honestly, this is probably one of the episodes that showcase Thai culture the most. We see traditional costumes, ceremonies, dances, different architecture, and even how certain traditions and codes can change depending on the region. For a big part of the episode, it almost feels like we are traveling with the characters. And I think that's something the Royal Pin does really well throughout the series. Alongside the love story, it also highlights Thai heritage. Culture is never just background detail, it's part of the story itself. But of course, in the Royal Pin, the most beautiful moments are always surrounded by tension building in the background, girls. From the beginning of the episode, Pat's suspicions keep growing. Meanwhile, Anin's cousins also decide to reveal her feelings. Knowing her marriage is approaching and that her life is about to take completely different direction, she finally chooses to confess what she has been holding inside for a long time. And what I really like about this scene is how it contrasts with the crazy girl. Unlike her, the cousin never tries to force anything. She doesn't threaten, she doesn't manipulate, and she doesn't guilt trip Anin. She simply expresses her feelings, fully aware that they won't be reciprocated. In a way, she represents a more mature form of love, a love that can accept rejection without trying to process the other person. And that made her a real green flag. Then comes the final scene, the famous final scene. During the festivities, Anin and Pin manage to meet alone behind the temple, and for the first time, it's Pin who takes the initiative. After receiving the ring from Anin in episode 9, she gives one back to her, promising that one day she will give her an even more beautiful one. But as always, in the way Pin, the happiest moments come right before the biggest storms. When they return to the ceremony, Pat immediately notices several details. The new ring on Annin's finger, but also the lipstick mark left on her hand by Pin earlier. And the editing is especially effective here. The looks, the close-ups, the visual details, everything is designed to show us that the pieces of the puzzle are finally coming together in Pat's mind. And even without a single word being spoken, we immediately understand what just happened. Pat knows. To me, this episode corresponds to what we often call a dramatic point of no return. For several episodes, the clues have been building up. The ring, the hairpin, the behavior, the looks, the suspicions, and now someone finally has all the information needed to understand the truth. What is especially interesting is that the catastrophe doesn't happen yet. The episode ends on the discovery, not the confrontation. And in storytelling, anticipation is often more powerful than the event itself. The viewer knows the storm is coming. They know it's inevitable. But they still don't know when it will break, how it will break, or what the consequences will be. And that's exactly what makes you want to press play on the next episode. For me, episode 11 is therefore the real turning point of the series, the moment where the secret is no longer really a secret and where the main conflict becomes unavoidable. So, here are a graph for episode 11. This one is pretty simple. We start low because of the crazy girlfriend, but it quickly disappears when she decides not to reveal their secret. From there, the graph keeps climbing. Even Annin's cousin confessing a feeling stays surprisingly sweet rather than dramatic. We reach one of the highest points of the graph with the ring exchange behind the temple with Pin and Annie. So cute. But then, like every time, in the very last seconds, everything drops back down into Rory because Pat knows. Pat knows, and that's really the beginning of the end, girl. You know, we know, I know. So let's move on to episode 12. Episode 12 is my favorite episode of the entire series. Episode 12. Oh my god, episode 12 is my favorite episode, but is clearly the episode of total rupture. It's the one where everything we've been fearing since the beginning finally happens, and more importantly, there is no longer any possibility, really no possibility at all, of going back. Pat finally discovers the relationship between Annin and Pin, and from that moment on, everything falls apart. And what's interesting is that we already had this idea from the previous episode. Either Pat will understand through her past and show empathy, or she will completely reject this relationship. And unfortunately, she chooses the second option. She then imposes a clear rule. Pin is no longer allowed to see Annin. And from there, we get a scene that is extremely hard to watch because Pin is completely devastated. She is literally begins her, and she says that without Annin, she will probably die, that she won't be able to survive. And what made this scene almost unbearable is Pat's response. A completely cold answer, where she basically says that she would like to see it, that she wants to see how far Pin can really go, whether she would actually die from love. As if she is testing the limits of suffering itself. And at that moment, we understand something very important about Pat. She is no longer in protection or understanding. She is in pure control. And even though the past suggested she might be the first to understand this kind of love, it almost produces the opposite effect. As if that experience didn't soften her but hardened her instead. This is really the moment where everything starts escalating into full tragedy. For several days, Pin stops seeing Annin. Annin starts sensing that something is wrong, without fully understand what. And Plague finds herself in the middle, unable to say anything, trapped between both sides, powerless to intervene. Annin meets Pin again in town while she's with Kwa, since Pat has restarted the pressure around the engagement. And that leads to the scene in the back room and then in the car. And to be honest, I find something really interesting in the car scene, even if it's not explicitly stated. I like to read it as a suspended space, almost like a temporary cocoon, a place where they can exist outside the outside world. And around them, there is the rain, which I almost interpret as everything collapsing around them: rules, society, pressure, imposed decisions. But despite all of that, the connection still exists inside this closed space. It might be a symbolic reading, but emotionally it works very well. From this point on, Pat realizes she won't be able to separate them gradually, so she changes strategy. She speeds up the engagement process. And we arrive at the final scene of the episode, which is for me one of the strongest scenes in this entire series. Personally, my favorite scene. Oh my god, I was so shocked. Anyway, Pat and Ping go to Annin's mother to announce the engagement with Kua. And Annin's mother is very happy. And then Annin arrives. And she interrupts everything. What follows is no longer a conversation, it's a declaration. A long monologue where she finally puts words on everything she feels. She talks about Pin as a love that has been built since childhood, something woven together almost literally like a piece of art made of gold and silver that she has shaped all her life. And that's what made this ending so powerful. She tells the truth. And this episode doesn't just mark a potential rupture between two characters, it marks the end of a world. From this point on, it's no longer a question of secret or discovery, it's a question of consequences. Everything that was built, the moment of happiness, the promises, the symbols, now collides directly with social, family, and political reality. And narratively, we clearly enter the final act of the series. So, our graph for episode 12, girls, and fair warning, from this point on, you're going to see a lot more downs than ups. You know. We start where episode 11 ended, worried. Very quickly, Pat discovers the truth, and even more quickly, we realize she completely rejects their relationship. So the graph drops really low. I didn't put it at the very bottom though, because trust me, even worse is still coming. You know. Then the graph rises again when Pin and Annin reunite in the town during the car scene. You know, I know. But it falls right back down when Pat rushes Pin's engagement to Kua. Finally, it climbs one last time with Annin's incredible declaration. That scene is just so powerful, girls. At that moment, we don't know what's happened next yet. So I decided to end the graph on a high note. We were all shocked, but also incredibly proud of Annin for standing up for her love. Now, let's move on to episode 13. Honestly, I think episode 13 and 14 completely crushed our heart, but let's do this. We are brave. Let's go, girl. Episode 13 picks up exactly where the final scene of episode 12 left off. Annin has just confessed her feelings in front of Pat and her mother, and most importantly, she goes all the way. She says she's ready to give up her title as a princess for Pin. At that moment, everything changes. Because this is no longer just a love story, it becomes a life-changing decision. And this is a moment when Pin, for the first time, truly realizes the weight of Annin's choice. She finally understands the magnitude of what Annin is willing to sacrifice. In an incredibly complete gesture, Pin takes Anin's hand and tells her that she accepts the engagement to Kua. Taken out of the context, this moment feels like a complete betrayal. And honestly, that's exactly how it feels the first time you watch it, like abandonment. But when you take a step back, you realize it's not simply abandonment, it's a desperate act of protection. A sacrifice means to keep Anin from losing everything. Except that, for Anin, in that exact moment, there is no room left for nuance. She completely falls apart. And it's the first time in the entire series that we see her like this, entirely shattered, completely overwhelmed, and unable to hold herself together. Episode 13 is clearly the episode of the total rupture between Pin and Anin. No compromise, no escape possible. We are fully in the direct consequences of the previous episode. Pin and Anin don't talk to each other anymore. They don't see each other anymore. And very quickly, we learn that the engagement is going to happen. But before talking about the engagement and everything that follows, there is one scene that, for me, is absolutely essential because it says so much. It's a conversation between Anin and her mother, right after the revelation of episode 12. And I think this moment creates a huge contrast with what we saw between Pat and Pin. Because here, we finally have a real conversation. Anin's mother listens, she understands, she questions. She is not in a pure authority or punishment mindset. She is in a real dialogue. And more importantly, she makes her very strong choice. She chooses her daughter, her happiness, and her well-being over social expectations. And I found that both beautiful and really important because it creates a mirrored contrast with Pat, two material figures, two vision, two completely opposite reactions to a love considered forbidden. And in a way, it makes what Pin is going through even more painful, because we realize it's not just the whole world against them, but different human responses depending on the characters. Then we move into the engagement scene, and this is clearly an extremely heavy moment. Anin has to attend it. And just this idea is already unbearable, being present at the moment the person you love officially gets engaged to someone else. It feels like emotional torture. And we can also feel a real shift in Anin. From this episode onwards, she becomes colder, more closed off. What I would call a kind of dark Anin. But it's not cruelty, it's emotional survival. A way of protecting herself by shutting down her emotions, so she doesn't completely collapse. And this version of Anin arrives at the engagement. The staging of the scene is also very powerful. Pin and Kua are on the ground, in a very coded, almost ritual posture, while Anin arrives from above, on the stairs before descending toward them. There is something really interesting in this visual composition, a sense of implicit hierarchy, but also immediate dramatic tension. And during the gift moment, Anin offers something very symbolic, the pin, the famous pin. This object has been important since the beginning of the series. It's the very first real symbol of the bond. And here it completely changes meaning. Because offering this pin is not just a nostalgic or tender gesture. It's also a closure. What connected us now belongs to the past. It's a gesture of love, but also a gesture of separation. Then there is this very striking moment where Anin leans toward Kua and whispers just 3 words in his ear. She wishes Pin happiness in love, and to Kua she simply says, "Know your place." A short sentence, almost surgical, but extremely powerful, because it immediately reestablishes a power dynamic, and more importantly, It shows that Annin hasn't completely lost her identity or strength despite pain. It's brief, but it's leaves a strong impact. Then we learn that Kwa is going to move into the palace, and for Annin, that's the final straw. It's no longer just emotionally attending a forced engagement, it's having to live daily with the reality of that relationship. She ends up with her cousin at the Pin Palace. And I find this character really interesting here because she almost acts like a mirror of Annin. She also loved Annin. She also lost that love. And she also finds herself facing a reality where she has to live with some form of resignation. She becomes a reflection of what Annin's pain could look like if it were lived differently. And then Annin breaks down. For the first time since the breakup, she puts her pain into words. She says she is broken, that her heart is in pieces. And this is a very important moment, because she finally verbalized what she had been holding in since the beginning of the episode. And during this scene, Pin is listening behind the door. She hears everything, and it's probably one of the most silent but most violent moments of the entire series, because everything is happening in what is not said. They still love each other, but they are completely unable to reach each other. And the episode ends on this completely open tension, with pain on both sides, but no possible action. So, here, our graph for episode 13, girls. And yes, we are really at the bottom now. We start on a high because we are still at the end of an incredible declaration. We are all so proud of her and her courage. But then everything falls apart when Pin says she will marry Kua. The graph drops immediately, and this time it drops really low. I made it rise just a little between anger and sadness because during a first watch, I think most of us are still angry at Pin, just like Annin is. It really feels like she gave up, you know? But after, with the engagement scene, we are right back at the bottom. From Annin breaking down in her cousin's arm and Pin listening behind the door, this episode completely breaks our hearts. And now let's move on to episode 14 because apparently our hearts haven't been broken enough yet. Stay brave. Episode 14 for me is clearly an episode of constant tension. A tension that has been building since episode 12 and never really comes down. And more importantly, it's an episode where every single moment of hope given to the audience is immediately taken away again. It's almost cruel in its pacing because everything is built like a real emotional roller coaster. And what is interesting is that we often say GL series are emotional roller coasters. But here, it's not just the series as a whole, it's this episode itself that functions like home, both for the characters and for us as viewers. We start with a simple piece of information, but one that has heavy consequences. Pins learned that Annin lived for a month or more at her cousin's palace. At first, it's not even a permanent departure. But from that announcement alone, you can feel something breaking again. Because even though their relationship is already forbidden, even though distance already exists between them, this departure reopens a wound that Pin still hasn't managed to heal. And then we arrive at the first big scene, the first ride of this emotional roller coaster. Pin goes to see Annin, and we immediately get back to a dynamic that has almost become structural in the last few episodes, the age difference. Pin is at the bottom of the stairs, Annin is a few steps above her. This isn't just a visual composition, it reflects their emotional position at that moment. Pin begs. She asks her to stay. She tells her that even if she has to marry a man, it destroys her, and that everything she wants is her. She tells her she can't live without her, and Annie responds with a very harsh coldness. A coldness that hurts because we can immediately feel she is not empty, she's not indifferent, she's protecting herself. And she even ends up saying, in return, that seeing Pin with someone else destroys her too, that she also has a hurt, that she also suffers. And for a split second, we still believe there might be a way forward. After Pin's declaration, Annie says then she doesn't go to her cousin's palace. And in that moment we think, maybe she's going to stay. But the series immediately breaks that illusion, because she doesn't tell her she's staying. Instead, she tells her she's not just leaving for a few days, few months. She leaves for good. She's going to England, far away, to never see her again. And that fall is brutal, because we go from a tiny spark of hope to a total breakup in just a few seconds. Then the episode shifts, dynamites, and expands the conflict. We discover that Mr. Crow is living a double life, a real double life, not just a hidden relationship, another woman, a pregnancy woman, promises of marriage, an entire parallel life built on a complete lies. And narratively, this is important because it changed the nature of the conflict. We are no longer only talking about a forbidden love between two women. We are also talking about a system of power, male manipulation, and a reality that traps Pin in a story she never really controlled. Annie then tries to reveal the truth to Pat, but Pat refuses to believe her. She doesn't listen anymore. She is locked into her decision, her logic, her refusal to question what she has already decided. And then another shift. Pin has heard everything. She hears the truth. She hears that there is still a chance to stop the reading. And for a second, we believe again. We believe again. Pin says she believes her. And once again, the series takes a hope, only to break it right after. Because even believing her, Pin refuses to cancel everything. She decides to go ahead with the marriage anyway. And this decision is probably one of the most painful in the entire series, because it doesn't come from a lack of love. It comes from sacrifice, guilt, almost resignation. From there, we reach an emotional point of no return for Annie, because everything that was still possible has now collapsed. And that's where we get a very strong symbolic rupture. Annie removes the ring Pin gave her. She looked at it and she let it fall to the ground. And this gesture is not just a physical separation, it's a narrative break. It's the end of the bond as it's existed until now. The last concrete trace of the relationship disappears. Then the final part of the episode becomes almost tragic. Annie disappears from the equation. She doesn't stay to witness the reading. She leaves. She refuses to watch something she can no longer stop. And meanwhile, the reading continues. And this contrast is extremely violent. On one side, social celebration, smiles, tradition. On the other side, total inner pain. Pin is there, she's crying, but everyone continues as if nothing is happening. And that's probably what made the scene so hard. This collective indifference in front of visible suffering. And right at the moment the reading is about to be finalized, everything stops. The woman linked to Mr. Crow's double life arrives and interrupts the ceremony. It's a total cliffhanger. In conclusion, this episode really works as a final chaos episode. It does something very precise narratively. It destroys every possible escape route one by one. Love is not enough. Truth is not enough. Sacrifice doesn't save anything. Running away doesn't solve anything. And what's left at the end is only pain. So, here our graph for episode 14, and as you can see, it's a real emotional roller coaster. We start at the very bottom, of course, because of the ending of episode 13. Then the graph goes up for just a few seconds when we think Anine might stay. She gently wipes Pin's tears away, and for one little moment we think maybe she's not leaving after all. But then everything crashes again when she tells Pin she's leaving for England forever, just so she won't have to see her again. The graph rises once more when Anine discovers Kwa's double life. We finally think there is a way to stop the wedding. Then Pat refuses to believe her, which isn't really surprising, but we get another little moment of hope when Pin says she believes Anine. And then, always and then, another huge drop. Because even knowing the truth, Pin still refuses to cancel the wedding. She still wants to sacrifice her own happiness to protect Anine. The last few minutes of the episode are honestly so hard to watch. Even while editing this video, they completely broke my heart. That's why I put the graph even lower than the lowest point. Watching Anine crying alone on the beach while the wedding goes on, everyone is smiling, Pin is crying, and the ceremony continues as if nothing is wrong. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Finally, the wedding is interrupted, so the graph goes up a little. Not because we are happy, but because we are hopeful and also a little confused. At this point, we have learned not to trust the show too much. Every time it gives us hope, it takes it away again. So, let's move on to episode 15 with our hearts completely shattered. Let's go, girl. Let's go. 2 left. Episode 15. Episode 15, if I had to sum it up in one sentence, it would be: the truth comes out, love finally becomes possible, but still not free. This episode works almost like a release after the storm. We are still dealing with the immediate consequences of the previous episodes, but this time, something breaks, in a good way. Everything starts with the collapse of Pin and Kwa wedding. The revelation of his double life explodes into the open. Lies, another woman, parallel promise, a hidden pregnancy. Everything falls apart within seconds. Which leads to the immediate cancellation of the wedding by Anine's father and Kwa being thrown out of the palace. And this moment is important, because it's not just a narrative victory for Anine and Pin. It's above all proof that the entire system was built on illusion. The danger wasn't only their love itself, but also the world around them. Men, arranged expectations, social appearance, and structures that collapse as soon as they are confronted with the truth. In the middle of this chaos, Pin breaks down. Literally, she faints under the emotional shock. And that's where Pat is confronted with something she can no longer avoid: the direct consequences of her own decisions. We immediately go back to her line from episode 12. I'd like to see that. And now, she sees it. She sees how far this situation has pushed Pin, how much it has broken her physically and emotionally. This realization comes late, very late. There is a very strong mix in her: anger, humiliation, guilt. But anyway, after all of that, we can believe that everything gonna be okay. But no, maybe no, because there is a very important element in this episode: the way it plays with the audience expectation. The teaser of the previous episode suggests that Anine would have a car accident. And obviously, after everything we've been through, that creates immediate tension. You think, another obstacles, another things that would stop them from being together. But when the scene arrives, the accident doesn't happen. It's Pin's nightmare. They got us, again. And this choice is really smart, because beyond playing with our emotions, it shows how Pin's mind has already been conditioned to expect tragedy. It's almost sad in a way. Anyway, Anine and Pin can finally find each other again, but even though they reunite, nothing is truly resolved. Annin's father still doesn't know everything. Social pressure still exists. And in the eye of the world, the relationship is still something unacceptable. We are not in a freedom yet. But Annin decides to tell the truth to her father. She simply tells the truth. She says she doesn't want to be married anymore. She wants to live with pain. And this moment is very powerful. There is no explosion to immediate trauma, just a sentence, calm, direct, inevitable. And the staging reinforces the contrast. Annin smiles. Her father stays frozen. Everything is suspended. And this episode leads me to ask one single question. Is truth enough to be accepted? Yeah, pretty philosophical here. But this is exactly the question that set up the final episode. Is truth enough to be accepted? So here's our graph for episode 15, and honestly, this one feels like an emotional honeymoon after everything we've just been through. The marriage is finally cancelled, Annin and Pin reunite, and the graph keeps climbing. It's such a relief after the last two episodes. The only emotional drop comes at the very end when Annin tells her father the truth. We don't know how it's gonna react yet, so we are all left feeling a little worried, not devastated anymore, just uncertain. Episode 15 finally gave us a chance to breathe before the final episode. Now let's see how it all ends with episode 16. Let's go! Episode 16 picks up directly after that suspended moment, where Annin's father has just learned the truth. And for a long time, he says nothing. And this silence is crucial. We are no longer dealing with an active obstacle or confrontation. We are in pure waiting, pure uncertainty, and somehow that silence becomes heavier than any conflict. Meanwhile, Annin speaks to her mother and says something very clear. If her father refuses, she will still live with Pin and go to England. This is no longer a request, it's a decision. At this point, Annin is no longer hoping passively. She is fully committed. And as viewers, we understand something important. Whatever happens, they will end up together. The real tension is no longer if, but how. One of the most powerful moments in the episode is Pin's first act of courage. Seeing Annin completely broken in her brother's arms, saying she doesn't want to leave and still hoping for her father's approval, Pin makes a decision. For the first time, she acts. She goes to see Annin's father. This completely reverses their dynamic. It's no longer Annin carrying everything alone. Pin steps into a mature, grounded, direct position. She speaks honestly. She explains she loves Annin, that she will take care of her, and that she wants a stable relationship, discreet but not hidden, without shame or chaos. The father remains cold, intimidating, closed off. Everything suggests a refusal. But the episode doesn't stop there. We then get a second key scene, built around visual hierarchy. Annin facing her father. She is downstairs, he is above her, the power structure is already written into the framing. But Annin doesn't back down. She talks about love, yes, but also about something bigger. Hope. The hope that society changes, that attitudes evolve, that love can exist without being hidden or punished. And when you watch this from 2026, it hits differently, because what she describes as distant hope is, in many places, already becoming reality. It feels like someone speaking from a world where love is still fighting to exist, while we already know the fight has started to shift. This scene is very powerful and very beautiful for me. And as always in this series, tension doesn't stop there. Pin is taken by Palace Guard. Everything is staged to look like punishment or separation. Prik and Priya panic. Pat collapse emotionally, and we fall right back into anxiety. But it wasn't a punishment. Pin discovers she is at Annin Palace, and everything has been prepared for her. Photos, candles, a space built around their relationship. What looked like a kidnapping was actually a setup. Imperfect, emotional, almost clumsy, but deeply symbolic. And then the truth is revealed through flashbacks. The father accepts, influenced by Annin's brother Anand, and after observing their relationship, he concludes something simple. Pin is the only person he truly trusts to care for his daughter. That sentence changed everything. It's no longer pure opposition, it's recognition. And it's beautiful. Again. The final part of the episode feels softer. Life slowly resumes. Like every hero in the hero journey of Joseph Campbell, at the end, after the climax, the hero comes back in the ordinary world. And here, it's the same. A sense of normality returns. And in the middle of that, there is one final symbolic gesture. The ring Pin gave Annin, once a promise, finally becoming reality. Not a promise anymore, a fact. In the end, episode 16 feels like emotional release. Not a perfect ending, not a fantasy ending, but a constructed one. After the crazy separation, pressure, and conflict, something finally becomes stable, a relationship that no longer needs to hide in order to exist. It's not the world that changed. It's them who learn how to exist inside it. So, our final graph for episode 16, girls. Even in the last episode, the royal Pin still manages to scare us one last time. We begin with uncertainty as we wait for Annin's father's decision. Then the graph drops into frustration, angry during the fake kidnapping. This bad surprise. For a moment, we really think the series is going to break our hearts one last time, but once again, they got us. After that, the graph rises all the way to the top. Pin and Annin are finally together. Their family accept their relationship, and even if they can't officially marry because of the time period, it doesn't matter anymore. The rings are there, their love is there, and their future together is finally possible. And if we zoom out and look at the whole graph, just look at everything we have been through. Joy, heartbreak, anger, hope, fear. We have experienced every emotion possible. And that's exactly why this series works so well. A great story isn't just about knowing the ending, because most of us already expected Pin and Annin to end up together. What makes the royal Pin special is the journey. It's every emotion we felt along the way. This graph is a proof of that. Every rise, every fall, every emotional twist, it shows just how brilliantly this series was written, directed, and performed. Because the goal of a story is to make us feel something. And I think it's safe to say the royal Pin made us feel everything.
You did it, girl. You did it. Thank you. If you're still here at this point of the video, thank you, Kapkun Hamak. Thank you so much. You just watched the analysis of all 16 episodes, and also you saw how much our emotion were played with throughout the whole story, the whole series. And to be honest, this was done very well, too well, but it's for that TLP, The Royal Pin is truly a masterpiece. I will never say it enough. I will never say it enough. The Royal Pin is a masterpiece. Everything was so well made. The set, the characters, the costumes, the Thai culture impact, the camera choices, the acting, and not just from our main actresses, but also from the other actors, the way the scene was built, everything had a purpose. It's crazy. I won't keep you longer because this video is, I think, very long now. Maybe too much, I'm sorry, but I hope you have enjoyed it, and I hope this analysis give you something more. I really hope this analysis make you want maybe watch TLP again with another perspective, or just see some scene different, some scene with another perspective, some choices with a different way. Anyway, I'm speak too much. I really want give you something different, and I hope I did it. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a comment and give me your opinion about the royal pin in the comment section. I really want to know. And that's it. Don't forget to subscribe for the next video. The next video we will analyze the character, like we will go deeper into their personality, their psychology, their evolutions, their choices. I will make a video about the characters, because a good series is not just about have a good story, but also we need good characters. And trust me, create a very great characters, it's very hard, and the royal pin do that very well. Tutto bene. I will stop speaking. Thank you. Kakunaha. And see you in the next video, or maybe on my TikTok every day for new reaction. And I just send you lots of love, and take care of yourself, girls. And voilà. Bisous.